Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to another edition of our inService podcast here at Service Council. I'm Gerardo Pelayo, the Chief Research Officer in the organization, and really happy to talk about today shifting the focus from AI to decision intelligence, and especially happy about having Ed Krzysik, the Vice President of Customer Success and Value at Circuitry.ai. Sorry, let me say that again, Circuitry.ai. There we go. To join me in this conversation, we'll be going through some examples, lessons learned, observations from the industry. Edward has a really interesting background that I'm sure we'll get into. But before we get into all of that, let me quickly tell you why I believe this is an interesting conversation. And AI, obviously, we see that it's very hard to keep it out of any conversation nowadays, right? Both in our personal and professional lives. But the trap that starts to emerge is that talking about AI becomes this massive umbrella. There's too many possibilities, and sometimes that can lead to a lack of focus, or we can get stuck into what's interesting and exciting and new and forget about what's relevant and how are we going to demonstrate that relevance, align what we're doing at what we can do with the priorities of what we're actually trying to achieve and communicate that to others. We are seeing from the data a significant shift from the state of AI relative to last year. Every year we conduct this state of artificial intelligence and service technology survey with our community, and I was looking at the data in 2025. Most of the organizations were at the stage of evaluating capabilities, perhaps running pilots. About 50% of them were in the latter stage. Right now, we're still in the collection process, but the in progress data is telling us that over half of respondents are either deploying AI in production, or even further ahead, they're already seeing benefits, measurable benefits from AI in their business. And that is a combination of not wanting to get left behind, but also we see that maturity advancing, and we want to build on that and see what's coming after that as we get into today's conversation. A bit of housekeeping. A reminder that today's podcast is getting recorded and will be available after we're done today across all platforms where you like to listen to podcasts, as well as all of our social media presence, the website, the LinkedIn, and all the other usual channels. And the last thing for our LinkedIn audience in particular, we appreciate that you're joining us and learning from this experience, but we also invite you to be a participating audience. If you have a question on the topic, an agreement, disagreement, you want to add your own perspective, please share that in the comments, and we'll do our best to incorporate that into the conversation. Edward has been kind enough to think on his feet, read and react as we go along. So we'll make this a fun conversation. With all of that said, Edward, that was a bit of a mouthful about myself, but I have had the pleasure of getting to know you a little bit already. But why don't you give an introduction about yourself and also what Circuitry.ai does within the landscape of service?
Yeah, great. Thank you. And on behalf of Circuitry.ai, thank you so much for the opportunity to engage this very important audience. So we really appreciate that. So yeah, again, Ed Krzysik, I lead customer success and value at Circuitry.ai. I have been in and around the field service industry really my entire career. So it's an interesting perspective, both as a practitioner, as a strategist, and as someone who is assisting our clients developing the right strategies to ensure that as they look at that AI umbrella, that they're really focused on these key elements of field service. So at Circuitry, we look at AI in a very distinctive way. So we know that in field service, this is the activities that are really impacting the customer value the most, right? It's customer facing, it's driving customer KPIs, it's driving internal KPIs, and really focused on those attributes that make that engagement so important to those customers, focused on downtime, focused on how long is a service call taking to get from point A to, from start to finish and all of that. So the model that we built in light of that is really focused on service, parts, and warranty, right? So three things that maybe in legacy systems would be looked at as separate pillars. What we do is really combine that as one sort of commonality and one aspect of service, but a critical one that for organizations that would be joining this call would be able to focus on, really key metrics and KPIs that I'm looking forward to exploring a little bit more in this conversation. But thinking about it in terms of the standard, first time fix, time on site, and then sort of advancing that through time to competency, right? Because we know that, companies may have staffing challenges, impact on customer downtime, all of those that become that life cycle of that one instance. But that one instance, if you will, is now educating future instances through this concept that we call decision intelligence.
Perfect. That's a great segue. And there's two things that I want to call out. I will come back to that decision intelligence concept. I think it's really interesting, but I want to look under the hood and see what do we really mean by that. But you called out these different elements and the importance of integrating them and looking at them as one. And it just triggered the event that we have coming up, our Smarter Services Executive Symposium in Chicago, because the theme this year is the service first enterprise, but building growth through symbiosis. That has come across as an important challenge, but a necessary direction as well, to think of the way that processes, data, technology come together in order for the overall system to be better. There's much more we believe that can be done by looking at it in an integrated picture. Seems that you agree, and I do want to let people know that Edward and the Circuitry team are going to be joining us at the symposium as well. They're going to be conducting a breakout session to interact with the community in this problem-solving environment, as well as sharing a little bit from how the technology landscape is evolving for them. But as excited as I am about the event coming up in September, let me come back to the decision intelligence that you teased out. And that's important because 9 out of 10 of the respondents this year to the Service Leaders Agenda survey say that they plan to increase the role that AI has, or the influence that it has in their service operations. And when we ask, well, what does that mean? The answer starts to get tricky. What elements fall within the scope of decision intelligence for you? Can you elaborate on that and how they interact?
Yeah, great question. And I'll also explain it in how these three main components, sort of connecting those dots, right? So in a service call, you have the initial service call. So it may be a self-help opportunity for that customer if you have the right data sources. But if you begin that and follow this path through service, parts, and warranty. So technician is dispatched, they're on site, and all the information that they need, whether it's a serialized asset, whether it is a make and model of a piece of equipment, whatever you're working on, if you're using this decision intelligence and replace AI with decision intelligence. So if you're using this decision intelligence, you're getting the right data sources, you're getting, the history of the service call, all that intel in a fraction of a second. So the technician has the best information, the most updated information at their fingertips. So that's the service aspect. Now I know how to fix this particular, this part, this piece of equipment. But the second layer to that is it's now sort of self-determining. Well, we know that a large percentage of this particular service activities will result in a part replacement. So now the decision intelligence is giving you the right data points to say, you have that part in your inventory. And just in case, we're going to pull up that quick knowledge and make sure that you understand, how to get to that very quickly without having to go back to asking yet another question. It would intuitively give you that insight. And then the third layer, which, sometimes gets put off to the side, or sometimes it's a completely different team. But now it's going to inform that warranty team, hey, this is a part that is warranty compliant, so it will begin that process as well. So instead of managing this as 3 different functions, service, parts, and warranty, it becomes one service activity that is driving customer value because you're impacting downtime. It's providing the right financial efficiencies internally because you're spending less time on site. You're probably going to decrease truck rolls by a significant portion as well. And you're going to make sure that you don't leave any money on the table by not following the adjudication process on the warranty side. There is great value in all of that. The other part of that, though, I mean, that's the sort of functional, transactional, this is good for field service. But by incorporating that and adding the self-help elements for the customer, letting them have that as an experience with your company and your brand name, I firmly believe that that is a leverage for growth, right? That says that you're going to gain market share because you're providing not just advanced technology, but a solution that will directly impact their downtime.
That's very, very interesting. A lot to unpack there, and I'll be double clicking on these things one at a time. You did remind me of one very revealing insight from our Voice of the Field Service Engineer research, which is we asked technicians, do you get not enough, just right, or too much data coming your way? And for field service technicians, too much was a 3-to-1, 5-to-1 ratio, depending on the tenure of the technician, versus not enough. And I think you brought up a great point in that it's not just about making sure that all the information that is necessary, all the intelligence that is necessary is available, but also making sure that it's only the one that is relevant available, right? That focus removes the noise from the experience, and I think that's easily forgotten. I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, let me expand on that a little bit. So I think that your comment that the higher portion says that they're getting too much information, I think that could be attributed to a tech still getting information and then having to make a decision within that, right? Like, because what we find is when you take all the disparate information, so you've got learning management systems, previous service calls, emails, manuals, all of that, right? So we collect all of that and we make sure that the technician gets the best information at the right time. But in that context, you will find competing information. You may find hit the red button, hit the blue button, right? You could have that. So as long as you have somebody that can adjudicate or make that sort of like, yep, I'm the subject matter expert, I'm the seasoned technician, here's the right answer, then that now is populated and available to everybody. So I think by doing that, they're not getting more information, they're getting the most correct information at the moment of need. And if you can improve that moment of impact for them, I mean, obviously you're going to solve a lot of, opportunities. One of them, and I'm sure we'll get to that, is adoption, right? Make it good and easy and successful for the technician, and you're going to overcome that challenge as well.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I do want to challenge one of the things that you mentioned, because you started talking about KPIs, and they always come into the picture. They must, but the challenge comes when you combine the concept of a KPI with the idea of integrating these different functions, and that's where friction sometimes starts to pop up. We saw in that same service leaders agenda survey that the most frequent barrier that was being called out as slowing down the key initiatives was the perception that there were too many competing priorities, which is a different way of saying the KPIs that are important for one are not the ones that are important for somebody else.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on how the way in which you're describing decision intelligence, this interaction between service, parts, and warranty, is what role is it playing in being able to align the metrics and the objectives that the service organization is trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think when you think of KPIs, I think by sort of breaking down the walls in between those three, functions of service, parts, and warranty, I think inherently you'll see how the dependency between the three, right? Because it does become one service activity that field technician is accountable to and responsible to. So I think if you follow that path where, by reducing the time on site or improving first time fix rate and ensuring that you have the right parts, those two are tied together, right? Because a first time fix could have a dependency on, I don't have the right part. But if you have that predictive model that says you 100% have the right part because you've checked it prior to, I think that's going to improve both of those KPIs. So the service leaders in those two organizations, I would believe, would work closer together. And I think on the warranty side, not only is that driving productivity, but there is a lot of financial gain in that aspect of it. So if you have somebody who's measured on financial performance, which everyone's measured on financial performance, I think that they're going to inherently take more of an interest in what's happening in that service activity. Because again, you have that sort of one face of the customer, which is that technician who has that direct input on all of that. But it all comes down to, does that person have the right intel at that moment's notice? Are they able to validate the parts, and are they able to dispatch the right sort of part activity? And then how does that automatically feed into the warranty process? I think by just combining that, you would have, if it's three separate leaders, they'd be focused on the KPI and the performance. If it was one leader, they would see how by pulling or focusing on one lever is going to add to, say, organizational or enterprise success.
Yeah, no, great way to explain how they connect. I want to bring up this comment that I see from colleague John Carroll, giving you praise for this time of need context, and I do believe it's something that needs to be highlighted, and it connects to a conversation that John coined this term, adaptive guidance. I'll leave the definition for everybody to see on the chat. It's a little bit long for the ticker here, but in a nutshell, it's this intelligent orchestration of knowledge, people, AI, the different learning modalities to help an individual complete a task. So going back to that time of need concept that you talked, the other thing that resonated deeply on top of the how they can help each other, this metrics, is the shared visibility. One red flag that we saw from our state of supply chain survey is it was close to 40% of supply chain leaders that were not actively tracking the impact of service parts on first time fix, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so that there's a connection, and service parts is measuring availability, service is measuring first time fix. But if there is not that shared visibility, that agreed upon intelligence on the connection between the two, then the efforts and the coordination as a result are going to struggle. So again, great points.
Yeah.
While we're in the topic of roadblocks and barriers, I don't know why I woke up with a glass half empty mindset, perhaps, but the ROI clarity is another challenge that I hear quite often in the community, right? How, in particular, when it comes to AI implementations. Can you share perhaps some examples of how you're seeing this conversation take place for an application that is for the most part new for everybody? What's working? How are you yourself addressing this challenge?
Yes, to me, it's all about that initial strategic alignment, right? Discovery is the key aspect of our business model. I think really understanding a few elements of a prospect or a customer's business, right? Like what's driving the current decisions today? What are the baseline metrics, right? The first time fix and those type of things, and being able to share examples of where we've implemented our solution and they've gotten the benefits that we're expecting. So focusing on that. But another aspect of that is really understanding what that company culture is, right? What is that culture around change management? What is that culture around bringing in something new and having it accepted, adopted, How are you measuring the success? And how does that translate to individual and team performance within that environment? So I think if you begin that, it's sort of that old adage, an hour of preparation is worth 8 hours of work. Is absolutely worth the time to sit in the room, roll up your sleeves, and really identify that, and then sort of determine what are the milestones and the ingestion points that Circuitry.ai can have this role. What are the challenges around the disparate information? And we know what they are, right? There's years and years of these data points. Sometimes it's drawn upon, sometimes it's not. Most of the time we see that information is not repurposed. It's in a system over here. So if we can draw on that, and we're allowed that access, then I think that that becomes the overall part of the ROI. But I really do believe that establishing the relationship, understanding the culture, the processes, and then coming up with realistic targets. So if you think of it in, what would happen in the first 30 days to make improvement, and then we would go in and really, ensure that there's a good internal and external marketing plan around that, because it's a great way. It's a great solution to present to customer base. What are some strategies internally to have a really, big successful kickoff? So is it a C-level video that says, hey, we're bringing in this great technology and this is what we expect? It's all of those things that would align with that company culture. But if we begin there, then what we find is that we're going to get ROI within 30 days. So you absolutely will get some quick wins. And then you look at the 60 days where you're really sort of incorporating this into the workflow and expanding the workflow. Maybe you start with service, now you're into parts. And then eventually, and within, say, 12 to 18 months, you see a difference in the financial performance. That's when the true financial ROI, because it's now part of the company DNA. You're driving in on every call activity. The techs feel great because their success rate is improving. Their stack ranking internally is improving. So I think that there are certainly some carryover elements to that as well. But I think that's, the preparation aspect of it, making sure that it's aligned with strategy and having this sort of consistent team step by step that really cares about that, the combined success, making sure that the cultures are aligned, that the right milestones are set. And then if something needs any adjusting along the way, that, there's a credibility relationship where you can have some, tough conversations around adoption or around, technology glitches or what have you. But the ROI is there, right? At any time that you can impact, key things. So the customer facing, first time fix and all that. But think about it from a tech utilization standpoint, right? I mean, there's a lot of headcount concerns in the field service marketplace today. So if you can replace some open headcount with this sort of a concept and improving tech utilization, I think that there's value in that. The last thing I will say on this is by partnering with companies that have people that have been practitioners like myself, I think you get a different take on it. So think of the ROI of utilization. I would suggest that a lot of field service companies are probably driving 84 to 86% utilization, right? You've got your standard day-to-day, you've got to keep time open for SLA management and emergency calls and whatnot. But if you can take that 80, let's call it 85%, and if you can move that to 92% without adding headcount, it's all efficiency. That's all ROI. So I think that if we can bring that approach, then the ROI discussion becomes, beyond the transactional and really, moves to the strategic. Does that answer the question?
Extensively, it does. And I was taking notes myself. I think a lot of richness in what you shared. You made a very bold claim along the way that I don't want it to get lost in the context, which was you talked about 30 days ROI and 60 days ROI, and that is a major difference to what we would see from technological deployments in decades past, and the supplement to that is it's not going to happen automatically. I do think there's multiple things that have to come together for that to even be feasible. But culture is one element where we are in agreement. It plays a major role. We saw, for example, one of the topics that I want to get into next, which is growth. not just the efficiency side. But out of the service leaders that that perceived growth to be their fundamental mandate in this year's survey, 1 in 4 say that their organization is still perceived as a cost center, right? And right there, you already see a misalignment between the objectives and the perception that they have about their role and the environment that they're in. And it's going to be very hard to succeed in such a situation. So the role of culture, again, another topic that we'll be talking about in Chicago, but I really like the raising awareness to that. And there's 2 more elements that I want to get into before we run out of time. First, you just spoke about self-resolution earlier, and also teased out this very effectively, this concept of, well, it's not just more data or even the right data, but is it already digested, so to speak, into a way that that is really intelligence. I've used the term density of intelligence as something that we should pursue, that might even be a metric of how much insights am I getting relative to the volume of data that I'm that I'm exposed to. So as you bring these concepts together, the experience that you have, any examples that that come up, or any fundamental concepts where you're seeing this shift from data volume and the fear of technical debt, perhaps, which is a lingering one, towards achieving this higher density of intelligence, whether it's for the self-resolution side of the house or technicians, your pick.
Yeah, I would say I love that question, because I don't think that companies would perceive having a data issue, right? There is a lot of data. It really is a density issue, right? What are you doing with that data? Like, have you come up with a way to repurpose it or to even monetize that? So this is a great question, because I think it also ties in, the 1 in 4 looking at this as a cost center. I absolutely believe that these are revenue generating centers to me. I think field service, if applying the principles of decision intelligence, if you do that, I think it becomes a revenue center, a profit center, and continues to be, because these are really big organizations within the company base itself, right? So this is certainly key. But on the data and density side, so imagine having years and years of disparate information, right? And I mentioned earlier, it's sitting in a lot of different buckets. So HR may have accountability to learning management systems. You've got, emails that are just sort of floating out there that would have information that would be interesting. You've got insight from techs that have been doing it for 25 years, all of that. But there is a way that was very frictionless that you could combine all of that and get the right output at the right time, at that, time of need or moment of impact, then the density of the data is now condensed to one activity. And that activity is, I'm a technician. I've got a customer who is experiencing downtime. All I want is the best insight that I can get in this very moment, in this big moment of need. I think that's where the density and obviously you're pulling from multiple sources. So I think that's where you're shifting. We have all these great data points to now we're going to monetize that, and we're going to make all of that information more valuable. Because if it's just sitting out there today in a bucket that nobody is pulling on,
Mm-hmm.
no value to it. If you combine it and let the system sort of, self-determine that this is the decision intelligence that you need to impact that customer, there's value in that. On the sort of the revenue side, think of an install base. So many field service organizations have challenges around install base, right? So the install base is driving all of the revenue, the aftermarket, all of that. So using this at the very beginning to, one, validate that you have all the right data points, entitlements, placement, all of that. Now that goes into the system. So that is going to, I believe, enlighten every future service call in that in that install base. So by using that, the sales and marketing team could leverage that for, early renewals, expansion opportunities. So that would be an example of the field service team providing even more value to an organization by giving them density of data, density of information, because you had the right decision intelligence platform.
Yeah, and reading between the lines, a quick reflection is that the impact of having the right data, it's not only going to hit the utilization and the metrics that we are familiar with, it's also going to have a direct influence, the many examples that you provided, on the technician experience, which in turn helps with a major problem that we see in the industry, which is the availability of talent, the capacity to retain that talent, to attract a new generation into the profession. So all of this conversation that we're having, I believe it's critical in order to not just react or depend on, but to actually shape what that technician experience looks like.
Yeah.
I think it's a major lever.
But even expand that to a customer environment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a customer has a critical piece of equipment that is down. If they have access to the same platform and they're able to troubleshoot, diagnose, and by the way, the trend in the market today is this push to self-help. People are more comfortable around technology. They understand how to, get access to information. But by giving them this sort of same platform, you're going to have a better customer experience. You'll have a better technician experience. That's what, the growth engine should be leveraging, right? If that customer has that great experience and their downtime is impacted, their KPI improves, and they're going to look at, whoever's bringing that in front of them as not just a trusted advisor, but, that's going to be a business relationship for life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It builds a moat around your install base. And coming back to this one last thing that I wanted to pick your brain on, because you talked about the margins, and we've covered efficiency. One of the other areas of growing interest that I see in the community, but not yet a lot of examples on how to be successful at it, is, can we use AI? Can we use this decision intelligence concept that you bring up for market share growth? What are your thoughts on that, or perhaps any early experience that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, what we're seeing is a lot of our customer base is allowing their customers to use this. As I mentioned in the previous conversation, that's where the market share comes from, right? So everyone's looking for what's the best innovation out in the marketplace. What have you brought to our QBRs and EBRs that, is impacting our business? What is the new creative approaches that will impact our bottom line, right? Because they're making some very large decisions on who they're going to go to. And this runs the, sort of the entire spectrum of what field service would be impacting. I think that's where it comes in, right? It's a differentiator. If you have the right model, and if you're coming across as being a confident, hey, we understand your business, and following the same thing. So field service organizations understanding what's driving that customer business and applying the right decision intelligence that will impact their bottom line, their growth, and their own market share. I think that's where the value comes into play. I think it's a sort of a trickle down or trickle up theory, if you will, but it's absolutely impactful. And the companies that embrace this, right, that it's not a never ending, we have an AI strategy. Well, everyone has an AI strategy, but does field service have an AI strategy? Does marketing have an AI strategy? It's all a strategy, but it really needs to be sort of separated out. But I think the companies that are focusing on the decision intelligence aspect and marketing that to their customers will gain efficiencies. And then even on the OEM side, if an OEM said, hey, we're going to embrace this and we're going to offer this to our dealer channel, or we're going to offer this to our licensed professionals, I think that they're going to get the advantage and the mind share of those dealerships to say, okay, that's the type of company we want to go out and sell product for.
Excellent. Edward, before I let you go, I've had a lot of fun learning about your perspectives, but I would like to learn a little bit about the individual as well. Perhaps you can share with the audience some personal project passion outside of your day job that that you'd like to share with the community?
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for that opportunity. And what I would like to share is a great initiative that that I founded about 18 months ago called Veterans in Field Service. And the idea behind it is through the network of business professionals sort of in my ecosystem, we focus on three critical aspects. And this is very specific to field service. So the first one is hiring. And that is working with organizations that have hiring needs to connect them to organizations like Hire Military, SkillBridge, organizations and leaders that we have deep connections with. And by the way, about 44% of all field service workers, whether that's day one or executives and leaders, about 44% have military experience. I'm a proud Army veteran. So that is great. And those roles within field service are perfect for veterans and active duty military that are transitioning to the civilian workforce. So we focus on the hiring aspect and connecting those organizations. The second tier is mentoring, right? As business professionals, we all have 15 minutes a month to work with a veteran, to maybe look at resumes, introduce them to field service. It's the right thing to do, and it helps out our brave military. And the third is to serve almost as a consultant around outreach programs, connecting to organizations like Wounded Warrior Project or Folds of Honor. We have those deep connections as well. So it's something that I'm really passionate about. I've seen how offering positions within field service can impact a veteran and active duty soldiers lives. But I think from an organizational standpoint, if you focused on recruiting those, you would get someone who shows up on time, who is disciplined, a problem solver, and someone who I think would net some really great results. So I super appreciate you allowing me an opportunity to mention that as well.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for your service, and it's a wonderful initiative. I know we went a little bit over time, so thank you to the audience for staying along. But I think both on the latter and all of the insights that you shared earlier around decision intelligence and its applications, this concept will resonate with a large part of our community. So thank you once again for coming to the studio, sharing your experience with us. Thank you to our audience for joining us once again. A reminder that today's podcast was recorded and it will be available across the usual channels. And we'll see you in our next instance, and looking forward to seeing many of you in Chicago. If you haven't booked a hotel, do it quickly. We are almost sold out for the second time on our hotel block. So don't hesitate there. Have a great rest of the week. Thank you, Edward, once again.
Thank you.
Be well.